Hi, Jay here with Laguna Tools, and we've got one of our metal cutting bandsaws through our Dake division here today. This is the B7 bandsaw. It's going to come in two boxes like you see here, the main box with the main machine, and this part is the stand. I'm going to set the stand to the side here, start opening up the boxes, getting the saw out, and we're going to do a complete setup and run the saw for you here. I've laid out the panels for the base cabinet here. You'll see these two are the ones that were inside the box, and these two pieces are the side panels, and these were from their own separate box. And one thing you'll have to pay attention to is this V fold. The V, the point of the V is going to point toward the inside of the cabinet. So that'll be one side, and the other side will be in this position. Yellow goes in the front, the dark panel goes in the back. You'll find the bolts in the hardware kit. You use a carriage bolt, and the carriage bolt will slide right through the square hole of the panel. And then I'll put the side panels on there. It's a 13mm socket. Get one nut started at each of the corners, and then come back and finish the bottom ones. As you tighten these panels down, just make sure that they're flush. Okay, that's the last one. I've done the top and the bottom. You'll see that there's two holes on these flanges on the side, and you'll find these bolts that are in the kit. You put a washer on each one, and these ones will come up and thread into the bottom of the machine once you have it set on the cabinet. So far, I've done all this by myself, but now I'm going to need a hand. This machine is heavy. 2 people can do a lift, 3 people make it a little bit easier, but make sure you don't strain yourself as you're lifting the machine up onto the cabinet. This will be the front, and the machine sides will go right here. The B7 is designed as a stationary machine where this cabinet just sits right on the ground. But you can also use one of our optional mobility kits to move the machine easily around your shop. Now is a good time to do that before you put the weight of the machine on there and try to lift it on here. So I've got the mobility kit set up. I'm going to go ahead and lift up the stand and drop it in place on the wheel kit here. All right, now that's all set. I'll keep it on these little pads right now so it doesn't move around. Now I'm going to get set up and drop the machine on top. Okay, I've got the machine just resting on top. I'm certainly glad I put it on this mobility kit. I'm going to set it on the pads. Now the machine is not fixed to the base yet. You can see that it slides around a little bit. And then what you want to do is kind of square it to the cabinet. And if you have a helper, the helper can help you move it around, but you'll square it to the cabinet, reach up and feel the hole through the bottom here, and take those 2 bolts, put one on either side, start the bolts, get them finger tight so you can move the other side if you need to, and then finally tighten those down. Okay, with these bolts started and finger tight, now I can scoot the machine over and just really square it with the cabinet before tightening those down. Now with the machine bolted down to the cabinet, I'm going to loosen up the vise and take away some of these packing materials. This tag is a warning tag, and it tells you that the blade is detensioned when the saw ships out. You'll want to apply proper tension before you use the saw. We'll remove this right now. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and grab this handle. This handle fits into the crank here. I'll go ahead and install that now. Take a flat-bladed screwdriver and thread this most of the way in, but leave it just a little way out and then tighten this nut. It'll be a 14mm. You can use a 9/16 as well, and that'll let the handle pivot or swivel on the bolt. So there's all the way. Back it off. And then tighten it down. Perfect, it's ready to go. Well, now that we've got that done here, I'm going to go ahead and tilt this to the up position here. I'll grab the handle out here, pull this lock pin that keeps it in the down and horizontal position. That'll let the head rise up. You can also see when the head is in the up position, this is the pivot, so you can make angled cuts. This goes from 90 degrees all the way up through 60 degrees, so you can make some really steep cuts. There's a positive stop here at the 90 degree, and also another positive stop over here at the 60 degree mark. If you need to adjust those, you'll line the pointer up here, loosen up the little key right here with an Allen wrench, and then there's an eccentric here that you can rotate to change that degree and dial in that 0 point here. There's a nice pointer right here. When you have that in position, you can turn the lock handle and pivot it out of the way. Now, before I do any cutting, we're gonna have to fill up the coolant tank. The coolant tank is built into the cabinet itself here. There's a tank built inside. There's a screen in the back here to screen out metal chips. We're gonna go ahead and get that filled up before we do any cutting at all. Now, I've gone ahead and added some cutting fluid here, and the mix that I use here is a formula that you dilute, and you'll actually dilute it to the ratio that's recommended by the manufacturer of your cutting fluid. In my case, it was about 7 or 8 to 1. And I fill up the reservoir that's in the back portion of the tabletop here. There's a reservoir that's about the last quarter of the table. You'll see that there's a grate right here, and that's a drain that drains back into it, and it recirculates using the coolant pump that you'll see on the back corner. It'll travel up through this tube, up through the valve, and then finally through a nozzle that's right here that shoots the coolant onto the blade, and that'll lubricate the cut. The entire tabletop here is a great big tray that drains all that coolant back into the tank and recirculates it. And while you're cutting, you may see that you're gonna have some splashes or some coolant going around. There's a handy drip tray, and it just clips right onto the edge of the table, and it can be slid forward or back on either side to pick up some of those stray drips. The guides are upper and lower bearing style guides, and they have shields on them. The bottom one's got a shield to help keep metal debris off of it. The top one has the nozzle for the cooling system on it, and this can be adjusted to get that nozzle and the guides closer to your workpiece, and that'll put more coolant onto the blade near the workpiece so less of it drops off and keep your blade cooler. Once it's in that position, lock it down with a handle. If you need to put bigger stock in the machine, simply retract this back and lock it in this position. The coolant's gonna spray out right directly behind the guides here and allow it to flow down into the cut. As you bring your stock up here to the table surface, you'll see that it's got a nice milled surface here for the bottom and for the back of the vise. You'll see that there are slots that are into the table, and these are for doing through cuts of your material. As this blade comes down, it'll actually drop down below the surface of your material and of the table into these. These slots are set up here at 90 degrees, at 45, and then the maximum of 60. If you're doing other angled cuts, for example, a 22.5 or something like that, there are no slots in the table for those. Actually, while you make those cuts, you're gonna go down into this, and that's quite normal to end up with slices or cuts into here for other angles of cuts. The vise is heavy duty. You can see that the forward casting is massive here. This is cast iron up in the front, and it covers all the action inside the vise here. The rear fence is also cast iron, as well as the table. And then the forward fence here is aluminum, it's serrated, and it's also replaceable. It provides a lot of grip when you're clamping your projects. Finally, you can see that the action of the vise is very, very smooth as it travels up and down the ways, and that provides a lot of clamping force and a lot of accuracy for your cuts. The maximum blade width capacity is 3/4 of an inch on this saw, and that's fantastic because it gives you a lot of beam strength in the blade as you're coming down for the cut. But before you start cutting, you want to make sure that the blade is properly tensioned. You can see that this one is loose, and it's shipped loose. To tension the blade, there's a knob right here at the forward part of the saw. We'll go ahead and crank this blade up to tension. And you want just a little less than a 1/4 inch of deflection on the blade as you're pressing sideways on it. And that's right there. I've got about a 1/4 inch deflection here with moderate pressure, and that's when my thumbnail changes color. So now that the blade is tensioned, let's get some metal and start cutting. you can see what a nice cut that is. And this is some pretty heavy wall tubing here. You can do thinner wall, you can do thick wall like this, or even some solid stock because this is a variable speed. You can arrange the speed for the type of material and the pitch of the blade that you're using to cut. Making a cut like this, especially if I'm on longer stock, is a lot easier if I'm set up with one of our XP roller tables. These are available in 14-inch or 20-inch width. This lets you move stock effortlessly into and out of your saw. Now, if you have any questions on this horizontal metal cutting bandsaw or any of our products, look us up on the web at lagunatools.com or at dakecorp.com. Thanks for choosing Laguna Tools.